Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the Career Vision webinar series. And today we have a very interesting topic as we continue to explore and bring about awareness and empowerment to students and young professionals, mainly in India, with this Career Vision webinar series. We continue to curate a diversity of speakers who bring in a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience to help empower and again provide necessary awareness for someone who wants to navigate, who's launching their early career or who's transitioning in their career given the current situation in the world and especially in India. Uh, COVID-19 has disrupted more than just careers. It has disrupted lives. It has disrupted disrupted businesses, economies, and launching a career or transitioning your career amidst this kind of volatile, uncertain, ambiguous reality can be really difficult. And often it needs bold approaches and novel approaches towards thinking about your career, thinking about your own professional development. So it is our endeavor at Training Vision Global Education to bring the right kind of experts and thought leaders to give this kind of awareness and support our community as much as possible. I'm Aditya, the CEO of Training Vision Global Education, and it's my pleasure and delight to invite Helen Fagart today. Helen is connecting from Paris. She's a senior business leader with more than, I guess, 2 decades or decade of experience as a HR business partner uh, across the EU and not just in France. Helen has worked with technology companies, a lot of different companies, and I'll also invite Helen to, in speak a little bit about herself and her journey as she does. So Helen is coming today, and we're happy to feature her to speak on a very interesting topic and something that's really close to our hearts, which is why and how diversity can be and should be your strength in your career. Diversity is something that more and more it's on the limelight, it's in the news, it's everywhere today, but it's still something that we all need to consciously and intentionally work towards. And for someone like you who's probably a young professional or a young or an undergraduate student, it's all the more important to appreciate and celebrate your own diversity. We're looking at companies more and more intentionally designing teams at workplaces to be more cognitively, culturally diverse. And there's a lot of interesting research that proves that diverse teams, diverse organizations perform better, are more creative, and so many other such things. So over to you, Helen. Welcome, and do share a little bit about yourself and looking forward to the session.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me, Aditya. Good evening, everyone. I'm really happy to be with you today for the session. It's going, I hope, a very interesting one. It was actually very interesting for me to prepare it. And as Aditya was saying, it's also a very important topic to my heart as well. About a decade ago, I actually went back to school to get my HR degree. And my thesis was actually about diversity in the workplace. So, and you did not know that, did you, actually? But so thank you very much for having me. What I'd like to do is maybe start a little bit by a quick introduction. As Aditya was saying, I have now about 20 years of experience. I can't believe that it's already there. But still young at heart, I guess. Yeah, 20 years of experience, mainly in multinational companies, mainly American, but covering a lot of areas in HR, from HR development, recruitment, also about talent development, of course, and career path. So a lot of topics that actually can be taught and also discussed today. I'm going to, if you want, I'm going to share my screen and start the presentation right away. And we can definitely start the session. So first of all, when we talk about diversity, I think what we will need to do maybe as part of our agenda today is to maybe check some definitions as kind of introduction. And as Aditya was also saying, what we're going to look at today is how you guys can actually evolve in that new normal, and how a career path might change or not actually in this new normal. And we're going also to see, obviously, very focused on diversity and how it is a strength and how you need to realize that. And then afterwards, I'll make a quick conclusion on how it is in this context a real asset for you, and how to find that strength in yourself. So without any further ado, let's jump right in. So in this slide, I kind of sum up what diversity means to most of the people, and I guess most companies at the moment. Diversity is all those components that can be actually one component of yourself, but might be something that we actually have, some innate things, but also some things that we get as we move forward. I'm thinking about, for example, disability. That's a diversity that, you know, we might actually encounter at some point in our life. So some of those traits are actually something that are natural to us and come from our backgrounds, our personality traits. But sometimes it's about also life experience. And basically, it is all the things that make us who we are. It's a combination of basically our differences that also shapes the way that we are seeing the world and our perspective and also our approach. So a very important thing is that obviously these terms do not really define who we are if we are taking them only individually, but definitely the sum of them help us understand who we are. One of the important things that I'd like to share with you as well is also how do we determine what is the new normal? That's another definition that I'd like to share with you today, because I think that, you know, there have been a lot of things going on at the moment. And one of the things that we have seen is that the new normal has not really been very defined, but it does talk about changes that we are undergoing. It is about how we adapt to it. It is about the work from home or study from home that you might have experienced as well, like all of us. It's about also how we interact with people in terms of the behavior, but also the social distancing and everything that our different governments and rulers have actually decided for us. And it's also about what we have seen also with ourselves is also how do we balance this in our life. And that has a great influence, obviously, on what is the new normal to us. I've put in this slide an article that I've actually found on the internet. And there is one thing that they were saying about the new normal is that in 2025, there will be far more tech-driven professional presenting way more big challenges. And I think it really rings a bell for me in regards to that session today, because I think that the chances are that you guys have valuable strengths that you might not value enough at this stage. What I'm saying is that when we're talking about tech-driven, you are young, professional or a graduate, and you are already in a learning curve, and you are quite connected, and you are tech-savvy. So that's already a couple of things that we can identify here as a couple of strengths. Let's just, continue, but we'll talk about it a little bit also later on. one of the biggest challenge today that we see also about the work from home or remote working or hybrid mode, whatever the terminology is, it's about what does it change in a corporation or in a company when it comes to people. And one of the things that I've looked at and actually seen actually in my company, which is a tech company, is basically how managers are actually needing to adapt their skills towards the new ways of working when it comes to obviously being remote. But not only their skills, but also their style, the way that they interact with their team. It's also about us as hiring managers or HR manager on how do we onboard people and how do we make them ramping up to the level that we are expecting. That needs to be adapted as well. It's also about how do we acquire the knowledge that in the past or in the old normal, we were used to basically go to the office, have a first day and week of induction. We would actually acquire a certain number of knowledge. We would meet people. So now it's about how do we do that now? And it's also about creating that collective intelligence. Because when you are in the office, when you are connected with your coworkers, it's very natural. You have formal or informal communications. You go, you grab a coffee, you talk about work and other things. But you do create that collective intelligence that sometimes you might say, oh yeah, I heard about that project. Tell me a little bit more about it. Now, every time you need to basically interact with people, it's usually through a planned or scheduled meetings. So it's a little bit different than from the past. And of course, it does change the way that we are working all together. It goes obviously with the collective intelligence that I was mentioning earlier on. It's really about how do we collectively work together, but also efficiently. And it's not that easy. So in terms of the requirements, coming back to the strengths, the skills, the competencies that are needed, I think the communication skills is number one. And I'll go back to that one in a further slide. But this is like a prerequisite. The organizational skills as well is how do you manage to get your time schedule that would fit not only the needs of the company, but also your own needs. You cannot be, available 24 hours. That's not possible. And so you need to make sure that, you get your things straight. And as a young professional, sometimes it can be very overwhelming. So again, this is something that you might need to think about. And also, as I was mentioning, because of this ever constant, change that we're going through, adaptability and flexibility, being agile is definitely one of the key things that we need actually as of today in corporations. Now, what does it mean and what type of influence this new normal has on the career path that we would like to create, both as from you, young professionals, but also from us, companies who need you actually, who are requiring your skills. Again, I think what I have seen, and because maybe I'm a little bit biased because I do work in IT company, in tech companies. So basically working from home, for example, was something we were already practicing. So it was not that new for us. And we already had that kind of let's say, flexibility in our workload. But as I was saying, there is one thing that we need at the moment, which is the fact to be able to adapt to the new world or to adapt to any changes in a company. And as I said previously, you might already have a great advantage upon other people in other technologies, in other industries, or in other jobs, is that you do have an education and you are tech savvy and you are connected. So in terms of the technical skills, these are the things that you have already in your pocket. So now it's more about how you come up with those great strengths that will allow you to be recruited, and how they go along with also those soft skills that everybody's talking about, and that we are going to talk about in a minute, because it does really is necessary at this stage. We need to have this combination of the hard skills, the technical skills that you are mastering, but also what about your personality that includes your diversity? How does it fit into that scheme? And when it comes to career and how to develop it, it is really a mix between a personal drive, how to evolve, how you want to evolve, but also companies' opportunities. And what remains, again, essential is how do you combine those hard skills and those soft skills? So what I'd like to basically go through right now is what I believe are key and key essential competencies and skills that you need to master in our day, in a company nowadays. So there are 6 of them, as you can see, and I will just take a little bit of time and focus on 4 of them only. And I will tell you why. I believe that teamwork and work ethic are pretty self-explanatory, so I won't go into the details of that. And I will start by talking about communication skills that we talked about a little bit earlier on. Communication skill is definitely about how you express yourself verbally, but also in written communication. But it's not only that. It's about your body language, your facial expressions, especially nowadays that we are communicating through Zoom. If I don't smile from time to time, for example, and show you how I am enjoying presenting that to you, you might think, oh my God, she's bored. So that kind of thing, you need to make sure that you master them, or at least you know what the intentions are. And it's the same with the fact that you also need to have a way of actively listening to the person in front of you. That's a very important thing nowadays, because it is also about how you get the message that the person is actually trying to give you. And trust me, in HR, it's very important, because every time somebody comes into your office or plug a meeting, it's usually because there's a problem. So trust me, active listening is quite key in under those circumstances. And also, it's about visuals. Today, I'm presenting you some slides that obviously I took a little bit of time to prepare, but it's also about how I want this to be quite clear in terms of my own communication. So all of these are quite key for you guys to master. The problem-solving mindset is really something that I think is quite key nowadays. I recently recruited somebody for my own team, and that was definitely something that I was looking for, because again, when you talk about work, unfortunately, not everything is going to be a rainbow and sunshine and and beautiful things. You might encounter issues, and this is where basically companies are expecting you. It's like how this person is going to react to basically things that are not going that well, things unplanned, and in those cases, you need to come prepared with this kind of problem-solving mindset. It's your ability to use your knowledge, but also your network to get things done and to get things resolved. It is also obviously about the learning opportunity, because you can see also things from another perspective when you're working with people to resolve things. So very important to my heart is really the problem-solving mindset. Now, we talked about flexibility and adaptability already. For me, I like this sentence, the only constant thing in life is change. And I think coming from a tech company, I can only agree to that, obviously. Last but not least is definitely deal with ambiguity. And again, the pandemic is just, making things so particular. I think if we're comparing even to 20 years ago when I started my own career, things were a little bit more, maybe a little bit slower than they are today. And also it was also a little bit more about, how do you envision, how do you have a global vision in a company? Basically it was a little bit more about, okay, if I don't know something, I'll go to my manager. Guess what? Nowadays, even your own manager might not know. Even the CEO of the company might not know. It's really a lot more short-termer. It is also a lot more about uncertainty. So you need to be at ease with the fact that things might not have an answer, might not have a date. So really dealing with ambiguity is quite key for you to be at ease and comfortable in how you are going to progress in your career. If we, which brings me actually to one of the key concepts that I've actually discovered a couple of years ago, maybe something that you have already seen, which is the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. It has been developed by a lady called Carol Dweck. And what she was saying is that the growth mindset is when students understand that their abilities can be developed. And of course, you might say, yeah, of course, that's so obvious. But you know what? It's very obvious for students, but it is very obvious with employees. And in a lot of companies nowadays, the growth mindset is actually part of how we want people to actually have competencies on. And so I just put in here a couple of elements regarding the growth mindset versus fixed mindset. I will leave it to look into it on the internet. You will find easily a lot more example. But what I wanted to touch base on today is the fact that basically the fixed mindset is when you think that your intelligence or your talents are fixed traits, and that basically you're just going to document them as you go. The growth mindset is also about thinking of those basic abilities that you have, but instead of just documenting them, you're kind of developing them. And it's just a starting point. And basically everything is an opportunity to learn something. So this creates a love for learning, of course, some kind of resilience, because it comes also from failure and errors. And you know what? We all do them. We all have at some point did some mistake, but it's also about how do you take advantage of that and how do you develop upon them. Your attitude towards learning can be quite determining when it comes to know yourself. It gives you also insights about how you react in case of failure. Are you a fighter, or are you somebody who is not able to solve the problem and just give in? Or give up. So if you do have that growth mindset, and sometimes you can have a mix between the fixed mindset and growth mindset, that's fine. But you continually work on improving your skills. And remember, the success is rarely obtained on your areas of improvement. They are based on your strengths and your skills. So that's why I insisted on giving you a little bit of tips on the type of strengths and skills that you need to master. One of the tips that I want to give you today is also that the way that you have this mindset right now as students, I think what is very important is that as postgraduate or young professional, you continue having this growth mindset your whole life. The reflex of learning things, the reflex of trying to get some teaching out of things is very important, and it makes you grow all the time. So that will be my tip as an older person on this conference. Now, if we are looking at the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset, and also what it brings to the table, the power of multiple points of view are very important nowadays. And it comes back to the diversity that we mentioned earlier on. Most companies now have identified, as Aditya was saying at the beginning, that it is a strength, and they are very advertising that. But what does it mean in reality? It means that we do have diverse teams that are also reflecting the diverse world that obviously your company is going to sell products or solutions to. So it is really making that self-awareness about business, but also self-awareness on who do we have in our team that can actually reflect that. It goes with creativity, it goes with problem solving, it goes with point of view. And that's, yeah, indeed, the perspective are different. It brings a lot of insight, and you can really probably, it's easier to solve problems when you see that. One of the things that I can tell you, however, is that diversity can only be valuable if there is a common purpose or goal. What I'm saying is that we come from different backgrounds, personalities, but if we stay only on our diversity, then it will not work. So we need to find a common goal so that we can all gather around that. And in a company, it's usually the culture of the company, and it can also be towards the goal of the team, the goal of the department, the goal of the company itself, the vision. So if you have some doubts at some point with that, I think it kind of brings back, the culture of the company helps you figure out. It's really about also how you can refer to your own manager or to your coworkers when you are a little bit in doubt about what is our common goal, even though we are diverse. So I think it's a very important point here that we need to find a way of being diverse as well as working all of us in the same direction. That's an important key point. Now, I know that some of you do not have an extended workplace experience or professional experience, and that therefore it is maybe a little bit tricky to actually see what are your strengths, what are your skills, and to identify how you can leverage on your strengths and maybe work on your areas for improvement. But surely it is something that we can do. This is something that we can work on. And so I'd like to propose you today a little bit of takeaway exercise that you're going to do at home. And it is about, how do you leverage your hard skills and soft skills, and where can you work on things versus where you already have some assets. And as you can see, there's a wink in there with little superheroes in there, because obviously they all have strengths, but also areas for improvement. So there you go. So the exercise is quite simple, and I know that most likely this presentation is going to be shared. So, but basically what I'd like you to do is when you go home, you kind of analyze that during your studies, most likely you were successful. So identify when were you the most successful, or the more efficient, or the most productive, and analyze what you did do at that time. What strengths did you show to be that successful, or to be that efficient, or to be that productive? At the same time, I want you to identify a moment where you did fail. And if you have identified areas of improvement or lacks that you have experienced, and what kind of conclusions do you draw from it in terms of the strengths you have, in terms of the areas of improvement? And it goes also with how do you, for example, react to pressure? I know that when you're a student, most likely you have exams. How did you react to that? Were you confident, not confident, comfortable, not comfortable? How did you react also to people? If you had some work to be done with in teamwork, again, was it something that you liked, did not like? Why? And what kind of reaction did you have with them? And what kind of interaction are you more comfortable with versus maybe not so comfortable? I think it's quite an important thing, because you will confront your reactions to situations, whether in success or in failure, let's call it failure. And how does it kind of interact or confront with your own diversity when it comes to your own culture, your own education, for example? And I will share a little bit of personal experience. Believe it or not, but I am a shy person. I'm not comfortable in addressing, multiple crowds. I'm not really comfortable. I'm more comfortable in one-to-ones, for example. But I've decided that because this is my area of comfort of development, that that kind of exercise, I will always try to do my best and do it. And the more that I'm doing it, of course, the more I'm being confident with it, or at least more comfortable. So I think, when you are able to identify that, to know yourself and to know how you react, This is also something that you can value and that you can come prepare when you go obviously in front of a hiring manager or a recruiter, or when you want to get a new job or you want a promotion. That's the type of things that are quite important in this situation, and especially nowadays with the situation, obviously, of unemployment or of a pandemic. So the crisis is also very much emphasizing. As we are approaching the end of the session, what I'd like to do is draw a conclusion here and give you maybe four tips, the best ones that I can get for you. The first one is definitely about, you know what, every experience counts, including the failure or errors that you may encounter. Just learn from it and draw a conclusion to yourself. The second piece is, as I was saying, learn to know yourself. If you want at some point to become a manager, for example, one of the first things that you will go through is most likely a 360, what we call the 360, sorry. And it is an exercise about how people and yourself are reacting. And for that, it is about how you know yourself, but also how you know around yourself the reflection that you're giving to others. So it's a very important point. To know yourself is definitely a key asset in the working environment. My personal tip, if there is like one that I can give you again today, is don't assume anything. As I was telling you, I'm quite shy. So, and it comes from also my education. It comes from maybe, you know, the way that I was raised, like you need to be humble, you do not show off and that kind of thing. So I was quite shy. I was quite, I was not talking a lot at that time. But I learned in the workplace that you cannot just assume. You need to ask questions. You need to ask them correctly, as we were saying about communication skills. But this is something that you have to do. To be able to learn is also to be able to challenge others, to ask questions so that you have a better understanding of what's going on. So don't assume anything. Just come with, let's say, like a blank sheet and find out. Last but not least, it's about how do you grow your self-confidence. And it will come with age, don't worry. Age is one of the good things about age, is maybe that one. But don't become overconfident on the other hand. And if I have this final tip for you today about this specific statement here, is if you are able to get a mentor, that is a very good way of developing your self-confidence, but also having some kind of sanity check with somebody who you would feel comfortable sharing with. So that will be my final tip for today. Just take it away. I'd like to obviously thank you very much for this session. Again, I enjoyed it very much, and I know there will be maybe a couple of questions coming up. Just a thank you. I hope that it has been written correctly in there. Just a wink also to obviously my native studio, which is Paris. If you ever come here, just don't hesitate. And I've put my LinkedIn in here so that if you want to connect later on, this is available to you. Thank you again, Shukriya.
Thank you so much, Helen. That was insightful, and that was simple yet profound. I think it was simple, but then some of the things that you have shared have profound implications for any of us. It's easy to say growth mindset. It's easy to say, but to do it, right? To put in the implementation, that's a whole different matter. You also mentioned about knowing yourself, knowing your own strengths, knowing your own weaknesses, knowing your own abilities, embracing your own diversity. These are some things that take a lot of deliberate effort and intentional practice to do. So I think that's a lot of food for thought and food for action too for all of our participants joining us live or watching this later. So I just wanted to thank you, and as we conclude, we don't have any questions. That's completely fine. we are. I just wanted to also promote and share something that TVI, what we are doing is we're happy to be launching our Enable program, which is a 21st century workplace readiness program, which includes some of these particular traits and skills that Helen has also identified, uh, and 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 sort of encourage for all of the youth to learn and develop, including things like personal effectiveness. How do you organize yourself? She did talk about that, or even emotional intelligence. So what we're doing is that, this program is a certification from TVI Singapore, where we're bringing this for the first time to India, and this is a 60-hour program. It's a 30-hour live and 30 hours e-learning program. And what we're looking at is we're bringing some of our trainers, mentors, coaches from TVI to support as many students and young professionals as possible to accelerate your careers despite the pandemic. We are launching this in September, and so we're really doing it at a substantially lower price than we do it in Singapore. So do consider joining this program. It'll be an exciting cohort based experience for all of you. And what we're also going to do is give you some of the career readiness profiling with our smart assessments. So you get to learn personal excellence, relational excellence, performance excellence, and etc. We also provide career services for those who are looking for it. And we have assembled a small, but we have an interesting group of trainers that are there, that we're able to support you with. And the encode assessment is also part of it, which also is something you can use, and you can actually try it out as if you're watching this webinar, as a goodie, as a complimentary. What we're doing is we're also giving you this assessment for you to try it out, and get your own career readiness profile to become more aware and understand where you are in your personality, in your working style, in your skill, in your behaviors, that are critical for 21st century workplaces. So thank you so much, Helen, and thank you all for joining, and thank you all who are viewing this later. So here's the link. It's bit.ly/tvi enable, bit.ly/tvi enable, for you to join our Enable program in early September. And we have exciting early bird registrations for you. So do jump in. A lot of students are already on their way for this program. So really excited about launching this for India. And we have bit.ly TVI/TVI encode. So to get your complimentary career readiness assessment. So it's not the full encode assessment, but it's enough to get you a sense of what is this encode assessment. And this is something that you can attach along with your CV and send it to a prospective employer to get a better chance of being employed, so they understand you better. It's more deeper, and we're happy to also share that this has been recognized, increasingly recognized in Hong Kong and Australia by certain employers. And show some love, follow us on social media, visit our website at trainingvision.in, trainingvision.in. And then if you're liking these webinars and you're finding these useful, as many of you are, do share this link, bit.ly/career vision webinar, so that you can spread the awareness and spread the empowerment with your friends and colleagues. And see you soon, and thank you so much, Helen, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. And I think we will wrap up.
All right. Thank you
Wonderful.
very
That
much.
was
Have a great evening. It was really great. Thank you
great day,
again.
great weekend to you and to all of
You
you.
too.
All right.
Yeah. Bye.
Helen, if you have some time, actually, I do have one question from Salsa Billa, right? Uh,
Sure.
I
Yeah.
just got it. Okay, sorry, I'm just looking at this Salsa Billa. In the midst of current COVID-19 pandemic, competition in the industry is quite tough. and how can we reduce our self-confidence and be able to compete with others other than a knowledge, communication, and creativity skills, right? So how do we compete with others beyond knowledge and communication creativities, right? So that's the question. If you have a few minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I can certainly share a little bit of what I can share with you on this topic. And I've seen actually that lately in the recruitment that I've made. So basically, people are showing a little bit more of what they can do on a hands-on kind of perspective. In tech company, some of the jobs that we are recruiting for are also about being strategic. It's a good thing. It's very trendy to be strategic. But I think what they are showing, what the candidates are showing right now, with this pandemic and the crisis that is going with it, is a little bit more about how operational they are. So it's not so much about how I can be creative for your company, as the person was saying, but more about what I can bring that is immediately usable by the company. And that, as a hiring manager, is quite reassuring, simply because you can say, okay, that person, I know that they can do X, Y, Z right away. And I think the hands-on kind of mindset
Yeah.
is quite very useful in that
Yeah.
sense.
Wonderful, Helen. At TVI, we always say, have a portfolio, right? Build a portfolio of projects. Uh, it may be on your website or your blog or somewhere. Talk about what
Yeah.
you're doing, right? Put in the
Yes,
effort, do some work, do some projects, and then talk about it. I think,
exactly.
unfortunately, some people don't do anything and just talk about it, or some people who do, they don't talk about it, right? These are two issues we always see.
Yeah.
But
And yeah,
yeah,
and to your point, I think there is again, coming back to the diversity. It also comes to how we were raised. Not showing
yeah,
off. If you do things, don't say it. I think there's a good balance to find
yeah,
between showing off and talking about it. And there's also something that is important, especially when you do not have a lot of experience in the workplace, is also about all the things that you might actually do that you don't think that are valuable. When I see a CV of a young professional, but I see that they have spent, I don't know, XYZ months in another country to learn a language, for example, or if I see that they have worked at McDonald's all their student years, for example, that's the type of thing that needs to be valued by employers, and they are, trust me. But also they need to be basically put forward by the young professionals, because it means that you are determined, you are a hard worker. It really gives a sense of who you are. I think that's an important point also. And for people who are coming back to schools after a couple of years, in the workplace, and again, that is a personal example. I took some night classes, when I was working, and I did not talk about it. But once I was with a hiring manager, and he was saying, "Well, how did you get your degree and so on?" And I said, "Well, I had night courses." And they were like, "Well, you're not telling it on your CV." And I was like, "Yeah, well, but that's the type of things that show who you are, how determined you are, how hard
yeah.
worker you are, and that is valuable as well."
Wonderful, Helen. So have humility, but don't be shy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Tisha has another question. So, what kind of activities or tasks can be done to master the skills that have been mentioned? Okay. So, Helen, I think we've mentioned some skills. Yeah. So,
Yeah, and so I think there are a couple of things that we can work on, and things that we need obviously need to get some help. And obviously, your company is definitely there to help them. I think when it comes to things like dealing with ambiguity is very personal. So I don't believe that there is, any master in that. It's just like being confronted and kind of get your mindset in the right mode. When it comes to communication skills, obviously there are a couple of things that you can do either on the internet, either to get help from external, but also it's about confront yourself as well, because you're going to talk to managers, for example, but also to coworkers. Can you address the same way? Probably not. So that's the type of things that maybe you can practice with also your colleagues or co-students. Let's call them like this. I think that's possible. If I take the other strengths, the one that you also mentioned about being organized or efficient in the way you're doing things, that is also something that you need to get your kind of to-do list, task oriented, strike them out, plan your week or your day. That's the type of useful tips that can be applied right away, and I think that's very useful in that case.
Thank you, Helen. I think Tisha's question is so critically relevant to today's situation, especially for India as well, because unfortunately, many higher education institutions, in the curricula, miss out, and it's not really adapted and aligned with industry or workplace behaviors. So what we see as this workplace behaviors of giving and receiving feedback, or for example, understanding one's doing looking at self appraisal, or being conscious and making a personal development plan. So actually, I mean, and I'm not saying that TVI is the only company who can do this. I'm not saying that, but we do have a fantastic program. We've been running this successfully. It is endorsed by the Singapore government, and for the first time we're bringing that to India, and Indian government started talking about these skills, these 21st century critical skills or essential skills for workplaces. So if you have the wherewithal, join our program. If even if you're not, even if that small amount hurts your pocket money, write a motivational essay to us. Probably we'll waive it off, right? We've probably even give a handful of scholarships. We're thinking about it. We're a social enterprise, and we're really looking at encouraging and empowering as many people as we can. But then that said, it's a continuous process. It's not an instantaneous thing that you attend, and that's why our program is 60 hours. We've had students come up to us and say, Helen, that, oh my God, 60 hours, that's a lot of time. My weekends. No, you can't learn these things in 2 hours or 1 hour. If anybody is selling you like this magic bullet that in 30 minutes you become a master of emotional intelligence, or it doesn't work, right?
No, and it's also about how you practice that
Yeah,
afterwards. So
yeah,
and it's a continuous
it's a
learning.
continuous.
I mean, you were talking, you talked about the positive feedback, for example. Trust me, I have employees in my company 50 plus years, and they still do not know how to provide positive feedback, and they're not good at receiving it, actually. So again, I think the first thing that I think I believe nowadays is better than my days, for example, when I started, is that we're trying to make our young people aware, and that is already something that you're starting on. You will not master, as you are saying, emotional intelligence, but at least you know what it is, and you can actually identify things and work on it. And I think that's already one step further than a lot of people who are way older, let's say, and way more experienced, but still do not master that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the power that you have as young people is that it is already identified. You know what it is, so you can start learning from it.
Wonderful, wonderful, Helen. I think that would be the last question. So thank you all for joining, and thank you, Helen, and we'll
Thank you.
see you around, and hope to keep in touch. Thank you. Bye.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye.